We're going to continue along on this US crypto strategic reserve train, and we're going to talk about, I know in this morning, if you haven't seen it, I just released a video this morning talking about kind of ranking the 5 coins that are kind of rumored to be in this US crypto strategic reserve from first to fifth, in my opinion of what I think is the best. Now, what I want to do today is kind of talk about, or I guess in the second part, in this like pseudo series, is talk about maybe some of the coins that are on the outside looking in that could be some really probably like high conviction plays that potentially could get added to this strategic reserve if it kind of continues to expand itself, or more get added, things like that. We're going to talk about 4 coins that I think could be in really, really prime position to potentially get themselves into this US crypto strategic reserve, or maybe they should be added, right? And maybe there needs to be a little bit of a campaign to get them in there. So anyway, we're going to go ahead, we're going to dive right in, starting looking out with that. I actually kind of came up with this idea based on this like big winners of US crypto policy graph. If we actually zoom in on this, we can see the 5 right here that are rumored to be part of the US crypto strategic reserve. We've got that, and then obviously we've got a whole bunch of others kind of in this orbit, and then this is kind of like this weird 5-dimensional Venn diagram of all of the different things, where they've got ETF applications, or attended the White House, or made in the USA, mentioned by Trump, all that type of stuff. So what we can see is we're actually going to focus on 4 coins in particular that I think could be pretty interesting. So the first one's SUI, the second one's going to be Link, the third one's going to be HBAR, and the fourth one is going to be Ondo. There's a couple of honorable mentions here, in my opinion, Litecoin and AVAX probably being 2 others. I could have brought those in as well. I didn't want this video to become too long, and so I want to get a little bit of some variation here, bringing in SUI and Ondo particularly. I think probably Link and HBAR are likely ones that I think would probably be kind of the 2 higher tier, and then Ondo and SUI kind of being the lower tier from there. This is all, again, just my opinion. You can kind of watch and see what you think. Comment. I'd love to hear all your guys' opinions, thoughts, like all of that type of stuff. So anyway, that's what kind of gave me the thought or the idea here. Moving on, if we do look at the crypto bubbles for the day, we can see the HBAR actually up pretty decent on the day, which is nice. Actually, this is the week, excuse me. Let's move back here to the day. We can see HBAR still up 10% today, which is pretty good. You can also see Ondo doing particularly well, Link doing well as well. It's kind of hidden behind my picture. And we can see here the fourth one, SUI, really tiny bubble here, up. But basically all the 4 we're talking about today are up on the day. And then we can see on the week, most of them actually down. SUI actually down very, very strong. And then we can also see, HBAR up very, very strong. So, kind of a little bit of a, tale of 2 coins here for some of these. But anyway, I want to go over, take a look at the reserve. Now, as you can see, we have 9 coins here, not 4. And the reason why is because I wanted to include the top 5 that have been mentioned to be included in part of the US crypto strategic reserve. Geez, that is a little bit of a mouthful to say. But what we can see here is kind of the following 4 that I want to discuss. So as we can see, we've got the 4 down here that we're going to be talking about today. HBAR, Chainlink, SUI, and Ondo. As we can see, HBAR, the 14th ranked. All of the 5 that are in the crypto reserve are going to be in the top 10. From here, we have HBAR, which is 14, Chainlink is 15, SUI is 21, and then Ondo is 40. So as we can see, the variance in market caps here is actually pretty wide. Cardano 10x larger than Ondo and 3x larger than Hedera, and Cardano being the smallest one by almost half of what the next closest one is, which is Solana. So obviously we can see some pretty wide spreads here. But I want to talk about kind of each of these individually and why they could be a pretty interesting addition to the US strategic crypto reserve. So starting out, we'll lead off with HBAR, and HBAR is a little bit interesting here because what we're seeing out of HBAR is we can see right here, HBAR is always working on some really, really interesting and unique ideas. A couple weeks back, they partnered with ICP, and this allegedly gave them the ability to kind of integrate directly with Ethereum and Bitcoin, which is really, really cool. Now we can see that ADA and HBAR potentially are now working together, and they're working on a game-changing stablecoin that auto-generates yield and rebalances itself. As we all know, stablecoins are kind of the talk of the town this year. So So seeing something like this happening would be actually pretty impressive. So again, we'll have to see, but this is not particularly surprising. HBAR and Cardano are two projects that always seem to be kind of on the leading edge of tech. So that'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. But I think this kind of speaks to exactly what we're looking to see. And in my opinion, I think what would be kind of pretty useful or interesting to have as part of this crypto strategic reserve are these companies that are really kind of trying to push the frontier. They're going to be pushing the envelope of kind of what is next, what is useful in the crypto industry, a lot of that type of stuff. And so I think these are, obviously this is already in the strategic reserve, and this one I think could be a pretty good addition there. So moving back, that's HBAR. I think HBAR would be a pretty compelling one. And then also we have Chainlink next. Chainlink is interesting because they do so much. They've got some very, very wide reaching kind of goals in terms of kind of what they do within the crypto ecosystem. And honestly, like they could be kind of like that layer 0 potentially, which could be cool. And obviously, if that is to take off and happen, then that could be very, very valuable to the wider crypto space. And so what we can see here, there's actually news that Sergey Nazarov will attend the White House Crypto Summit on March 7th. Again, these are crypto projects that are all very, very close to the president or people within the current administration. And so in my opinion, this probably does give them a lot of potential opportunity to be added to this crypto strategic reserve if that were something to that would come along. So anyway, before we kind of continue on to the third and fourth and give some reasoning there, I did just want to give a quick plug for BTCC. I do have that link in the description below. If you want to see, it's very, very easy to trade. They have, I believe, all of the coins that we are talking about today. If I can type correctly, we can see, it's very, very easy to trade. They've got that trading view plugin, so you can see and track charts fairly easily. It's also very easy to open longs and shorts. If we want to open up a market, we can see, let's just do 100 ondo, keep it somewhat small. We'll do on like, maybe 2x or 3x leverage because we're very, very unsure with where the market's going. We can open it and boom, it's open. Very, very simple, very easy. If this is something you are potentially interested in, like I said, I got that link in the description below if you are looking for that. They are doing that 10% bonus on first-time deposits still, as well as extra bonuses and no VPN or KYC necessary if that is something that's interesting to you. So anyway, like I said, check the link in the description below. Now, moving on, I wanted to go to the third one on this list, which is, again, the 21st place crypto here, and this is Sui. Now, Sui is one that I find kind of interesting here. Even though it's quite small and almost a tenth of the size of Solana, I think a lot of people compare it somewhat similar to Solana. It seems like they could be kind of taking a similar type of path there. And this is one that I do think is interesting because Solana has had its tech problems. It has had some scaling issues. There are some rumors of potentially underhanded things going on within the Solana ecosystem. Again, I don't know any of this for sure. I can't prove it out. Most of the people who claim it also don't seem to be able to prove it out either. So there's a lot of this where we don't know for sure here. But Sui is one that has so far received had a pretty nice reception overall to kind of the overall crypto space. It did really, really well in 2024. Hasn't really done particularly well in 2025, but obviously it's just the beginning of the year. There's a long year ahead of us, and I do think that we could potentially see Sui have a very, very great year if it kind of continues along that way. Also, we did see something really, really interesting coming from Adeniyi Sui, and we can see he's the co-founder and CPO building on, like at the Sui network, all that type of stuff, which is really cool. And what we can see here is he says, yes, ETF soon. I don't really know what to make of this, right? Because what we can see is Sui here is only about a $7.8 billion project, and most things getting ETFs are 10 billion plus or way more, right? Way more sometimes. And so, the fact that something like Sui would get an ETF, this just seems very, very, very premature, kind of in my opinion. Hard to say though, right? Because this is something that could be interesting because it would give retail, TradFi retail and institutions potentially a little bit more access to some upside here via an ETF. A lot of these, as we could see, had a lot more of that upside already gained before they got into the ETF space. So this is something that, that could potentially be better for an upside perspective. However, we do have to look at kind of the counterpoint of that, which is it is going to be more risky, right? I mean, when SUI drops within this, possible upcoming bear market, maybe we see SUI go down 90, 95, 99% even. I think 99% is probably a little bit unrealistic, but I think 90% is possible. 70% is probably likely. It's hard to say for certain, but I do think a lot of that is very, very possible. And if that is exposed to kind of the world of TradFi via an ETF, I don't know. I think they might have a mini heart attack seeing something like that happen. So that is something that I do kind of wonder a little bit about, is if something kind of sub 10 billion market cap is maybe a little bit premature for an ETF. So anyway, we'll have to see kind of how that goes. I'm kind of somewhat agnostic to that, but I can see kind of the counterpoint as to why people might be a little bit concerned about that. So anyway, I'd love your guys' opinions. If you guys have any sort of strong opinions one direction or the other, just leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys, and obviously I do respond to all of those. So yeah, just let me know what you think. Now, the last one that we have here is probably even more speculative than any of the ones that we've listed thus far, and this is because it's only a $3 billion market cap, and this by in comparison to a lot of the other ones that we've seen so far is absolutely tiny. So this is something where, Ondo, I'm sure many of you have heard of Ondo before. This is one that obviously, while small, is kind of interesting because they're backed very, very strongly by BlackRock. And BlackRock obviously has $10 trillion of assets under management. BlackRock is kind of really been fairly tight in with Ondo. And so that's kind of interesting. Obviously, tokenizing assets for right now is kind of floating a little bit under the radar from like a narrative perspective. But I think the reason that is because this is mostly, in my opinion, likely going to be gate kept by institutions. Institutions don't need to open source this. Institutions don't need to make this permissionless. These could all be on private blockchains, and it kind of allows them to obfuscate things and potentially, kind of play with the numbers like they've been doing for the past ever. Think about fractional reserve banking and a lot of that type of stuff. That is still very much possible if you're obfuscating the chain and making it a private blockchain that not everybody can see, that's open and permissionless. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes. But I do think one of the really strong opportunities in the ecosystem is Ondo. If BlackRock and all these other institutions really are committed to tokenizing everything like they are claiming, there's going to be a lot of really, really huge winners in this space. I mean, a lot of the tokenization, I think the tokenization market is like tens of trillions of dollars large, just because there's so many instruments that can't really be like traded on a liquid basis because they're weird and they're kind of exotic, maybe exotic debt instruments or exotic equity instruments, something like that there's not really necessarily a liquid market for. However, if you can tokenize them on a somewhat standardized basis, then that obviously opens up a massive new market and access to liquidity, which is really, really cool. And so that's kind of the play for Ondo. Obviously, BlackRock is a huge backer. We can see here, this is from Patrick McHenry, who is now Ondo's vice chairman. He says, that's the reason why BlackRock is in action. That's the reason why all of these large financial players are clearly going to be in action here, of us using better software to do what they currently do. So essentially, they're essentially kind of playing the long game of Ondo can do something that they have a need for. They're using technology that is essentially better for the space and better, just more efficient overall. So therefore, it makes the companies more efficient. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what place BlackRock has in this upcoming world, but I do think RWA is going to be very, very, very important as we kind of proceed into the future. This may be one, though, that maybe it takes a year or 2 or 3 to kind of really come into its full form, just because a lot of people don't really know exactly what form that's going to take yet and how that looks. So anyway, those are the 4 that I wanted to talk over today. As I mentioned very early on, I do think we owe kind of an honorable mention to both Litecoin as well as AVAX. Litecoin is one that I think is particularly interesting because it's kind of like it's the alleged silver to Bitcoin's gold. That to me also makes a little bit of sense because it's very much like a commodity as well, while a lot of these others seem to be more like tech experiments, tech demos, something like that potentially. And those types of things obviously are very, they're not really like commodities, and they're not valued like commodities. They're more valued like Amazon or Apple or Nvidia, something like that. And so it'll be interesting. AVAX is the other one that I think is kind of worth mentioning here. AVAX has a pretty strong, I would say, gaming contingent to it. So if crypto gaming ever kind of really takes off, AVAX could be a huge winner there. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Kind of give a little bit of a quick pitch as to why some of these other crypto coins on the outside looking in potentially could be a good bet for the U.S. Crypto Strategic Reserve in the longer term. Again, I'm still a little bit skeptical that really anything other than Bitcoin should be in there. But in my opinion, the gap between, let's say, something like Bitcoin and Ethereum is much wider than something like a Cardano and a HBAR, or a Cardano and a Chainlink, something like that. So I don't know, maybe that's a hot take. I'd love to hear you guys' comments in the comment section below if you agree with me, disagree with me, anything like that. But I don't know, I just think that Bitcoin kind of stands alone, in my opinion. And so having any of these others, it does kind of maybe dilute it. And then at that point, you should just have maybe potentially some wider exposure to the market. Don't try and pick, 4 or 5, pick maybe 8 or 9 or 11 or 12 or something, just to give you kind of a wider spread. The reason I say this is kind of looking back to something more of like the .com bubble. Probably 80 to 90% of the crypto companies that exist today are likely going to fail and not exist within the future. And so if that's the case, kind of spread your assets far and wide and make sure that you're kind of taking a good swath of the crypto market. Maybe, this is kind of an argument for something like an AVAX, where they've got a very, very heavy gaming contingent. If gaming does well, obviously AVAX is probably going to be the big winner among all chains. Again, you never know for sure, but that's just kind of a potential thought, or how I would be looking at that from more of like an asset allocation perspective. I still do wonder if we should be having a crypto strategic reserve at all, given the debt position that the United States is in. I think it might be better off just to pay down the debt, but that's neither here nor there. This is obviously happening, and so I want to talk a little bit about what could be some potential good additions. So anyway, like I said, hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe. It really, really does help me out. Obviously, I'm making a lot of videos and trying to, continue to stay relevant and provide interesting and unique takes on the market and help people get perspective more than anything. I know crypto can be a really crazy place. These people love to thrive on your emotions. That's how they make money. So you need to just make sure that you're staying careful and safe, all that type of good stuff. So anyway, like I said, hopefully it was helpful. And also thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.